A girl dressed in thin clothes with a weak complexion suddenly fainted on the streets of the town. The kind people called an ambulance. In response to the nurse's constant questioning, she mustered all her strength to say a name: Sophie Giroux. The woman was teaching when she was suddenly called out by the commander and the police. Eve said that yesterday, a girl named Alice suddenly fainted on the street. Alice's condition was critical and she was rushed to the emergency room. At this time, Gemma was confused and did not understand what was happening to her. Then the police told Gemma that the girl's name was Alice. Gemma was stunned because Alice was Gemma's daughter who was kidnapped 11 years ago. Since Alice went missing, there was no news of her. Now, Alice suddenly returned. Gemma was moved to tears. She quickly informed her husband, Mr. Sam. The whole family immediately went to the hospital. The road to the hospital seemed to be endless. Their missing daughter was found. Sam felt like there was a lump in his throat. The police told Sam that when Alice was brought in, she almost died from a ruptured appendix. They walked to the door and slowly looked inside. Although they were mentally prepared and they expected their daughter to have suffered a lot, when they saw a thin, pale girl covered in wounds, very weak, they were helpless. It was hard to imagine what had happened to Alice. At this moment, Sam saw Alice's tattoo. He was sure that this was his daughter. Then Alice tried to open her eyes and called out for her father. This call for her father was something he had never even dreamed of. Sam looked at his daughter, now tormented beyond recognition, and his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Sam stepped forward to hold her hand, but Alice suddenly dodged and looked scared. Gemma blamed herself for getting angry with Alice just because of a tattoo. Faced with Gemma's intense longing for her daughter, Alice was also moved to tears, but her eyes were still empty. She looked at her brother again and called his nickname Matthew. It was unknown if Alice was weak or if she had gone through something terrible. She wanted to be alone and said that she still couldn't accept it at the moment. On the other side, Eve called Julian to tell him that Alice had returned. But the most important thing was that when Alice lost consciousness, she said a name: Sophie Giroux. When Julian heard that name, he was also shocked because this girl was also kidnapped 11 years ago. That was the last case he handled before retiring. Eva suspected that two girls were kidnapped by the same person. So, Eva asked Julian to review the case files from that year to find out the similarities between the two cases. Sophie's case had been a pain in Julian's heart for a long time. Because there were no more clues at that time, Sophie could not bear it. Then she did something stupid right in front of him. If it was really the same kidnapper, then maybe Sophie still had a glimmer of hope to survive. The next day, Alice's physical strength gradually recovered. She accepted the police's interrogation. Alice recounted the process of her kidnapping very calmly. Alice recounted the details of the incident with an emotionless face. Sam felt as if his heart was bleeding. Unable to bear it anymore, he left in pain. He hid in the bathroom and sobbed. Eva asked if Sophie was with that man. Alice sadly said Sophie was very weak. They kept her for a long time and did not give her anything to eat. Alice had promised Sophie that she would come back to find Sophie. This information was extremely important. At this time, the doctor informed them of something even more shocking. During the surgery, they discovered that Alice showed signs of having given birth. Gemma could not accept it immediately. After a day, Alice asked to be discharged. Gemma thought that the hospital needed psychological support for Alice. Therefore, Gemma hoped that Alice would stay and observe for a while longer. But Sam was adamant that Alice had suffered too much. What Alice needed most now was to return to a familiar place. That evening, they completed the discharge procedures. When Alice returned to the once familiar house, she still had no emotions. She just stood there staring at the photo of her and her brother. Gemma approached and asked softly, "Did the doctor say that Alice showed signs of having given birth?" But Alice replied that she did not understand what Gemma was saying and chose to avoid it. Then Alice said she was tired. Alice's bedroom was still the same as it had been 11 years ago. Gemma took out a stack of colorful letters. They were letters their family had written to Alice. Every Christmas, they looked forward to seeing Alice again. They used the letters to express their longing for her. Alice remained silent. After saying goodnight to each other, Gemma gently closed the door and hugged Sam, sobbing. Alice looked back at everything in the room. She wondered if this was the family she had longed for day and night. The room also made her feel a little warm. Finally, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. After Gemma returned to her room, she still couldn't sleep. So Gemma looked back at Alice's old photos. Gemma wondered what Alice, who was once lively and smiling, had gone through. What had caused their relationship to become so strange? Because Gemma was worried, she secretly opened her daughter's room in the middle of the night. To her surprise, Gemma saw Alice sleeping on the floor. Sam and Gemma also comforted each other that Alice had suffered too much, leading to such a big change in personality. But the events that happened in the next few days would bring a big change to their lives. A silver-haired old man appeared at Sam's door. It was Julian, a very responsible retired policeman. Sophie, who was also kidnapped, was mentioned again. Julian had promised promised Sophie's mother that he would definitely find her kidnapped daughter. So Julian traveled thousands of miles from France to Germany just to ask Alice a few questions. Alice told Julian that she had escaped from underground. Sophie was weak and could not bear it. She could not stand up at all, so she did not escape with Alice. Julian suggested if Alice returned to the forest, could she find the place where they were imprisoned? Many of her answers were very suspicious. Obviously, the answer still did not satisfy Julian. Julian wanted to continue questioning, but he was chased away by Sam. At this time, a small, unintentional action of Alice betrayed her. This detail was also noticed by Julian's sharp eyes. Returning to the hotel, Julian immediately checked the video footage recorded before Sophie disappeared. Julian was surprised to discover Sophie. 2 hours earlier, because of excitement, she had made the same small action, exactly like Alice just now. Based on this action alone, an experienced police officer like Julian guessed that this Alice must be the real Alice and possibly Sophie. But what was unexpected was that Alice agreed to Julian's suggestion. Before they left, Gemma gave Alice a scarf. Gemma deliberately misrepresented that she and the art teacher knitted it, but Alice said the right name in time. Gemma also did not know why she tested her daughter. When they reached the forest, under the protection of the army and police, Alice gradually went deeper into the forest. This place was very far from the city, and the road was dangerous. It was hard to imagine how strong Alice's will to survive was at that time, to be able to walk out of this forest barefoot. Julian asked Eva why she did not do a DNA test. Eva said her father thought it was unnecessary because they were very sure of Alice's identity. At that moment, she stopped and took a deep breath. Suddenly, she accelerated. At this time, Alice's Gemma told Sam about her suspicions. She felt that her daughter's change was not small. It could be said that she was different from before. But Sam said that Alice had suffered very bad treatment. No matter what changes Alice had made, the important thing was that she was back now. They should not think too much about other things. Alice returned to the place where she was imprisoned. In a flash, she became panicked and anxious. This was a Y-shaped trench left over from World War II. They immediately sent people down to check. It was dark, damp, and cold inside, completely unsuitable for human habitation. Julian wanted to confirm his hypothesis. Julian found the right moment to approach Alice again. Before Alice could say anything, the conversation was interrupted. Alice sighed, trying to suppress her emotions. Could she really be Sophie? The police had thoroughly searched the trench, but found no useful clues. There seemed to be no sign of anyone having lived here. According to Julian's observation, he discovered a clothing store receipt in the mud next to the wall. The next day, based on the information on the bill, the police quickly identified the target. Early in the morning, they arrived in front of a butcher shop. They confirmed that it was Adam. Adam was immediately taken into the car by 2 policemen. Then Eva asked Adam's wife a few questions about Alice's cornering. Late at night, Alice knocked on her brother's door. She brought a monkey toy. When they were young, they had a fierce argument over this thing. Now she would give it to him. Of course, there was a condition in exchange. She wanted to sleep in the small warehouse. He just had to lock her up. Alice's brother didn't understand what she wanted. Why did he make such a strange request? The wooden house was cold and dirty, but he still couldn't resist his sister's repeated requests. After that, he locked the door from the outside at Alice's request. Alice was huddled in the cramped space on the floor and slept soundly for the first time. The next day, at dawn, the warehouse door was suddenly opened. Alice stepped back in fear and began to beg Sam and Gemma not to blame Matthew. Sam saw that his daughter was so scared that his eyes were full of pity. He hurriedly went forward to comfort her. No one would blame her. But now the police had caught the kidnapper and needed her to testify. Alice calmed down. With Sam's help, Alice slowly stood up. Alice returned to the room and flipped through some photos of the suspect. The previous photos were eliminated one by one. The 4th photo was Adam. At this moment, Alice suddenly became agitated. She lost control and ran out of the room. Then Stone followed and held the photo for Alice to confirm. After Stone received Alice's answer, he still did not leave. Stone told Alice a story about a turtle that wanted to fly to the blue sky. Then the story of the man who fell to his death. Alice heard the story and her tears were about to fall. She asked how he was still alive after doing such things. Stone did not answer, but reminded Alice that it was very cold. Then he turned and left. The surprise was not only that. Alice took the initiative to meet Julian. At this time, Julian also mentioned a few things about Sophie. Alice frankly admitted that when she ran away, she was a bit selfish. Alice's initiative and frankness made Julian believe that she was hiding something. Why did she lie? Alice felt that Julian's eyes seemed to see through her. Alice did not know how to answer, so she could only ask Sam to stand beside her. But Sam did not know what to say. Then Julian asked her why she did not tell him where Alice was. That sentence scared Alice, and she kept backing away. Sam was even angrier now. Sam even attacked Julian. Then Sam chased his frightened daughter upstairs. Julian realized that Gemma also had doubts about Alice's identity. Gemma was more sensitive than anyone else. When Gemma talked and interacted with Alice, she did not feel any closeness, so Gemma also doubted Alice's identity. Sophie. Gemma wanted to do a DNA test. At this time Sam got angry again, so the two argued. Sam walked to Alice's door and knocked, but no one answered. Sam was afraid that something terrible would happen again, so he pushed the door open. He found the window wide open. Alice was nowhere to be seen. He rushed towards the small wooden house, but still no one answered. Why did she run away? Alice was not used to sleeping in a warm room. She liked to sleep in a narrow warehouse. This strange action made Gemma suspicious, so Gemma argued with Sam. Alice had just returned a few days ago and was missing again, so Sam worriedly walked around the place. The police were also looking for her everywhere. At this time, Alice came to a gas station and filled the tank with gas. After a while, Alice avoided everyone's gaze. Alice walked out from deep in the woods and put the tank in the corner of the warehouse. Then Gemma asked Alice where she had gone. Alice said she had just gone for a walk. In response to Sam's concern and stronger questions, Alice used a pleading tone to say that she just wanted to be left alone. To ease the awkwardness of the day, Sam suggested that they go to the Christmas market together tomorrow. Then they took Alice out to eat and bought some hot wine. At this point, Alice suddenly laughed. Then she continued to say that she remembered the first time she had been on a roller coaster. Alice smiled involuntarily as she told the story. She said that they had been on a roller coaster together. When they reached the highest point, she could see very far. When the roller coaster went down, she couldn't help but scream. Sam and Gemma heard it and found it even more strange, because they had never taken Alice on a roller coaster before. But now Alice's face was covered with a happy smile. It turned out that person who took Alice was kidnapper. Gemma wanted to stop Alice's thoughts, but she said that she was very grateful to the man for letting them go out and have fun. Gemma couldn't stand it anymore, so she yelled at Alice. At this time, Alice looked at Gemma with a determined gaze and said that life wasn't as simple as Gemma thought. She and he were together, and sometimes they were very happy. Then she said that she had actually given birth to a man's child. Even though she had gone out, she didn't feel truly free. Why did she think like that? There was no doubt about it. This Alice had Stockholm syndrome. She had been held captive by that man for many years, so she gradually developed feelings for the person who kidnapped her. In addition, the man often bathed her. She would feel that it was not cruel but kind. When she was deprived of everything else, it was easy for her to think that it was love. At night, Alice came to the small hut as usual and insisted that her brother must lock the door. She told her brother one thing, and he had to do it. At this time, Gemma saw that it was getting brighter outside the window. Opening the window, she saw that the warehouse was on fire. A bad premonition immediately came. Sam went into Alice's room and found that she was not there. Now he could only pray that his premonition was wrong. At the same time, he rushed towards the warehouse but found that the door was locked. Sam loudly called Alice's name, but it was dangerous. He used his hand to break the glass. Oxygen circulated immediately. The fire broke out and swallowed Sam. Sam lay on the ground in pain, burned. Matthew watched the raging fire, his mind filled with guilt. Sam was rushed to the hospital. After the fire was extinguished, there was only a charred body and a tank of gasoline left in the house. Eva asked Julian what he had said to Alice. Why did Alice disappear for 3 hours after he left? When she returned, the unfortunate accident happened. Julian felt that this was completely unreasonable. He must investigate the cause of Alice's death. First, he had to understand what Alice had been doing during the 3 hours she had been missing. Julian was a policeman who persistently sought the truth, so he visited all the nearby gas stations. Finally, someone remembered that Alice had come. Police officer George also thought that Alice had run out for no reason, and her behavior was very suspicious. They determined the search range based on average walking speed. After Alice died, they lost Sophie's clue again. Eva went to the prison to find Adam to ask about Sophie's whereabouts. Adam, as usual, said that he had not kidnapped anyone. He did not know Alice or Sophie. Sam was in the hospital with serious injuries. He still did not want to believe that his daughter was dead. He blamed his son for locking the door. Sam also blamed Gemma for saying hurtful words to Alice, which led to her death. From here, their family was divided. Adrian found Gemma at the headquarters. They did not know who leaked the information about Alice's death, so they should consider issuing a press release. Not long after, Eva came and gave Gemma the unbelievable news. The DNA test results from the crime scene in the warehouse were back. It was their daughter. The hospital confirmed it. It was really Alice. Alice was kidnapped for 11 years, but she had only been home for 4 days when she suddenly did something stupid. During the day, Alice sneaked out of the house for 3 hours. Alice not only bought gasoline, but also bought a bouquet of flowers, but she did not return home immediately. So they went to the flower shop. The shop owner clearly remembered Alice coming. She was very sad at that time and bought a bouquet of purple wax flowers. Then she asked the shop owner for directions to the cemetery. They arrived at the cemetery and quickly found the bouquet Alice had bought. The deceased's name on the tombstone was Henry Reed. Who was this person? Alice suddenly disappeared. She secretly bought flowers, then went to the cemetery, and then returned home. Why did she visit him? There must be a secret hidden in there. Through investigation, they discovered that Henry was an English officer stationed in Germany. They drove to Henry's house. Unfortunately, Henry died 2 days before Alice appeared. There were no signs. With many years of experience in solving crimes, Julian absolutely did not believe that this was just a coincidence. Since they could not find any clues about Alice, they would change the direction of the investigation. Starting with Henry. According to the archives, Henry also had another relative. That was his son, Daniel Reed. Currently, he was also a soldier at the base. They went to Daniel's residence, but only his girlfriend was at home. She said that she and her lover had not seen each other for more than 2 years. Currently, Daniel had gone to join the war in Iran. It was unclear whether he was alive or dead. Recently, he kept mentioning a name called Tehran. It seemed to be related to Alice's death. Julian refused to ignore any suspicious clues. Julian and George returned to the police station and reviewed Henry's case file. He looked up Henry's call history. On the day before Henry died, he contacted a phone number many times. Perhaps through this person, they could learn more about Henry's situation that day. They went to a service staff at the address. At first, when she heard that they came to find information about Henry, she said that Henry was just one of her customers. That day, he called her to ask her to come to his house. But because she had another appointment, she refused his offer. It all sounded reasonable, but Julian's keen sense of smell did not believe it. When Julian returned again, he brought a carefully wrapped Christmas gift. When the woman opened it, it was the easel she had always wanted. Julian said that it was found at Henry's house. Although she considered him a customer, he considered her his lover. Speaking of this, the woman also decided to tell the truth that she knew. That night, she did go to Henry's house, but she kept waiting in front of his house. She waited for more than an hour, but he still didn't show up, so she finally couldn't bear it anymore and pushed the door open. But she saw Henry lying in a pool of blood. To avoid arousing suspicion, she quickly left the scene. Julian asked the woman if she was sure she didn't see Henry's car. The woman was very sure, but the police records said that Henry's car was right outside the door. This was enough to prove that someone had moved his car afterward, so the conclusion was that Henry definitely didn't do anything stupid. An officer was killed for no reason, and he was definitely related to Alice's kidnapping. Julian guessed that Henry's son might have more clues. At that moment, Julian suddenly convulsed and fainted on the chair. Julian was sick. Case was suspended for a year. The feeling of guilt was like a cancer, eating away at Gemma's every cell. She spent most of this year sullenly at home. She watched interviews about her daughter on TV all day. Their family became distant. The butcher, Nadia, was hospitalized for a whole year due to a sudden attack or malicious revenge. Today was the day she was discharged. There were many reporters gathered outside the hospital. Most of them criticized her husband's actions, but the woman was still convinced that her husband did not kill anyone. When she returned to the cold house, the floor was still covered with blood from the previous attack. She opened the package on the table without taking it apart. Inside was Adam's camera that had been lost and found again. Adam was a photography enthusiast. He loved taking pictures of all kinds of birds. Nadia looked at the pictures and thought. Suddenly a photo of a girl appeared, startling the woman, causing her to throw away her camera. Could it really be her husband who kidnapped Alice? The case suddenly became elusive. The next day, she visited Adam. At this time, Adam said that someone was definitely trying to frame him, but the wife chose not to believe him anymore. She handed the camera to the police. A year later, the case took a new turn. Julian called Gemma. Julian received news that Alice had mentioned that she had been on a roller coaster. Julian thought that he could narrow the investigation down to the park. At this time, Gemma thought that there was no need to rekindle the past wound. Julian argued that he still did not believe that the Alice who was burned to death was Alice. Gemma felt strangely emotional, but Gemma thought that DNA would never lie. At this time, Julian told Gemma about Henry Reed, a British officer who was murdered but was created to do something foolish. Not long after, the British military took over the kidnapping case. They should not have been held responsible. Science does not lie, but people often lie. The DNA test results were most likely intentionally edited by someone. This rekindled hope in Gemma's heart. Just as the military man returned home, a suspicious man suddenly appeared. At this moment, the man looked at his house's tightly closed window with a worried expression. He hurried back home and unlocked each door. It turned out that he was the one who kidnapped Alice. This evil bastard not only kidnapped Alice's body, but also her mind. Alice's spirit was completely controlled by him. Alice believed that Adonis was protecting her. At that time, Sophie was seriously ill and had to be treated immediately. But not only did she have severe appendicitis, but she also had many injuries from previous abuse. This would definitely arouse suspicion, so Adonis had carefully planned for Sophie to appear as Alice. So after Sophie was effectively treated, she rushed home to make a perfect escape. Then she was hidden in her room by Adonis for a whole year. Now, the case had new clues. The outside world was full of news about Alice, so Adonis prepared to take Sophie away early. thoroughly. He cut her hair short, then used her daughter and a good life in the future to threaten her. This made her not dare to think otherwise. She accepted Adonis's control. At this time, Julian was suffering from illness and lost a lot of hair. Just before the surgery, Julian received a phone call from his girlfriend, Daniel. Finally, there was news of Daniel. He knew all the things his father had done, and he mentioned a place called Tehran. Julian felt that the truth was waiting for him to discover. Julian could not lie on his deathbed, so Julian hid from his family and went to Tehran alone. But the next road was not smooth. No one was willing to take Julian to Tehran because it was the most dangerous war zone in Iran at the moment. Moreover, it was now a war zone full of bombs and bullets. When Julian returned to the hotel, he found that Bandrik had been waiting for him for a long time. Bandrik was moved by Julian's spirit. Finally, Bandrik decided to take Julian to Aswar. Julian planned to leave in 2 weeks. Since Matthew witnessed Alice doing something foolish, he could not help but feel crazy inside. He became more and more lonely. Since then, he let himself go and made some bad friends. Sam is undergoing a psychological evaluation, so he cannot return home for the time being. Only Gemma was strong and alone, searching for clues about her daughter. She looked through the photos left by the glider, trying to find her daughter in them. At this time, Matthew suggested going to the cemetery to visit Alice, so Gemma called Sam. Then, Sam hurriedly drove to the cemetery, but he did not get out of the car. He knew his son was deeply hurt by his words. Alice's death had torn the family apart. Julian and his men had reached the border smoothly. They were about to enter a war zone full of dangerous routes. In addition to the army, there were also unknown terrorist organizations, but Julian had no intention of retreating. Unexpectedly, a militia vehicle rushed out to stop them on the way. After taking them back to the camp, they were surprised to meet Daniel. He could not believe that the two of them risked their lives to come to the camp. Daniel said that he always believed his father was an upright man, but Sam always sent money to a man named Mosa, and he always wanted to find out what happened. At that moment, they were attacked by their opponents. After a fierce gun battle, Daniel died. After the battle in Iwo Aju, they found Mosa. They learned the real reason why Henry sent the money. The man said that he sent the money because he felt guilty. Julian learned that in 1991, Henry and Stone came to the village and killed Sam and his sister. Julian was entering the last moment of his life, so he did not hesitate to go to the Isaac battlefield. Julian received a very important clue. Henry and Stone were in Isaac. They accidentally killed a girl in the village. 2 soldiers committed such a cruel act. What really happened behind it? Was it related to the kidnapping of Alice? The first thing Julian did was to find Eva and tell her that her father and Isaac had killed a civilian girl. He wanted to ask him some questions. How could Eva believe that her father, whom she had always respected, was the murderer? So Eva sent Julian away. But Julian was not one to give up easily. After Eva left, Julian went to see Stone. But now Stone was suffering from senile dementia. Julian patiently recounted the situation on the Iraq battlefield to try to help Stone recall. Finally, Stone remembered what the 3 of them had done to that poor girl. At this time, Stone began to become confused again. Suddenly, he became as domineering as a high-ranking officer. The noise attracted the nurse. Julian had no choice but to leave first. When Gemma was packing her husband's clothes, a hotel pen fell out of her husband's coat. She followed the address to the hotel. All of her husband's actions were in sight. Gemma didn't expose him. Now, her most important thing was to find clues about her daughter. She was looking through the photos taken on the roller coaster a few years ago. The obsession to find her daughter had kept Gemma busy doing boring and dry things. Finally, she saw a familiar face. Gemma's persistence had finally paid off. So, Gemma plucked up the courage to meet Eva, who was also her husband's lover. Gemma told Eva about her discovery. Since the roller coaster would automatically take photos at top, Gemma looked through all the photos from the past few years. When she got home, the woman made a new discovery. She found out that there was another girl who had been kidnapped because the person in the back of the photo wearing Alice's necklace was a girl wearing glasses. Because she had interfered with Gemma's family, Eva tried her best to make up for it. Eva took the photo to the police officer George. George was searching for missing person records on the system. Sure enough, he found that the girl with glasses had also been kidnapped. George was immediately scared. Could it be that the person had kidnapped 3 girls at the same time? So he quickly called the girls' families. Based on the information provided by the mother, George went to Adonis, his close friend. George took out the photo to ask Adonis to identify it. George was shocked when he heard the truth. Before George could react, he was strangled from behind by Adonis. Then, Adonis picked up the drill next to him and attacked George. Just as George was about to find the culprit, he was killed by Adonis. Then Adonis went to George's house to tidy up his clothes and used his phone to text George's colleague to ask for leave. Suddenly, Julian came and loudly called George's name. Julian called George, but no one answered. Julian thought George was at work, so he didn't think much of it. Then he left. Soon after, Julian went to Gemma, and she told him about her discovery. Julian also hoped hoped that Gemma would use her relationship with Sam to get the personnel list during the 1991 Gulf War. Stone said that 3 people had done something terrible together. He had to know who the third person was. Gemma said that Sam couldn't be relied on because he didn't understand her at all. So Gemma went to Eva again. Gemma also learned that Eva was pregnant with Sam's child. Gemma advised Eva to keep the child because she understood the pain of losing a child. Moreover, the relationship between her and her husband had already been sour. It would definitely end in divorce. At this time, Eva went out to answer the phone. Gemma took the opportunity to open Eva's computer to investigate. On the other side, Sam had made an appointment to go out for a drink with Matthew today. Then they would make up. But Matthew still didn't dare to face Sam. He hesitated for a long time before entering. At that moment, Matthew saw Sam and Eva hugging each other affectionately. Matthew heard Julian talking about Eva. Matthew learned the truth about his sister's kidnapping related to Stone. So Matthew called a few friends to the nursing home. Waiting until the nurse got off work, they sneaked into Stone's room to vent all their anger on him. The next day, Gemma handed Julian the Gulf War personnel documents and Stone's current team roster. One name immediately caught Julian's attention. Julian immediately went to the butcher's house. Julian would find the final answer here. Because in the 1991 Gulf War, it was Nadia who served as a senior military instructor. She remembered that Stone and Henry reported that their teammate Adonis had been missing for several days. They hoped she would send someone to look for him. But she said that the teammates would usually go out and look for the locals. But Stone and Henry still went out to look for Adonis. Because he said he had a girlfriend, they knocked on the door, but they were scolded. The homeowner said he had caught Adonis and his daughter having sex, but his daughter was only 19, so he kicked Adonis out. Stone assumed Adonis was probably being held. So at night they sneaked into the man's house. Sure enough, they found Adonis beaten up in the basement. They rushed Adonis out. The man heard the noise and ran over. Stone shot him twice, killing him. To cover their tracks, they set fire to the house. When he went out, the young man ran to say that his sister was still sleeping on the second floor. Stone rushed in, but the fire was too big. They were too late. When she returned, Nadia did not report to the headquarters, but transferred Adonis to a position of equal rank. He eventually became the unit's press liaison. Julian immediately assumed that the main suspect was Adonis. At that time, the woman did not save him, which made him always resentful. So when the fake Alice appeared, Adonis diverted public attention to Nadia's husband. The photo in the camera and the receipt in the trench were also part of Adonis's plan. Gemma finally showed her husband the photo of the roller coaster. Everyone was waiting anxiously. The end of the disappearance was finally near. Fortunately, Julian was still persistent in searching for the truth. The dark clouds sometimes saw the sun. Julian found Adonis, the notorious swindler. Julian asked Adonis frankly from the beginning, why did he let Sophie pretend to be Alice? Is the real Alice still alive? Adonis still wanted to lie to get away with it, but Julian said that he knew about the bad things Adonis did in Tehran. Julian understood Adonis's special love for women. Adonis looked at Julian with surprise. Julian said that as Adonis, he definitely had the authority to get all the documents during their investigation. Just then, the police car drove up outside the window. Confronted with Julian's accusation, Adonis smiled evilly. Julian told Eva that Adonis was the one who kidnapped Alice, but no one believed Julian, and they even wanted to take him in for questioning. It turned out that Amy's father was seriously injured and hospitalized. According to the nurse, Julian was the last person to visit him and witnessed the two of them having a fight. Julian kept emphasizing that they must restrain Adonis. Seeing that Julian did not admit it, they still decided to arrest him tonight. After a while, Julian's wife hurried over. Seeing Julian's weakness, his wife blamed him for being selfish because he was willing to risk his life for the case, but did not want to go into the operating room for the sake of the people who loved him. He thought that being able to use his limited life to save the freedom of the two girls was more meaningful than his own life. Gemma went to the police station and accidentally met Julian. She wanted to tell Gemma the truth, but Sam stepped forward to blame Julian. Julian said that the culprit was Adonis, who was in the same unit as Sam, but Sam clearly still did not believe it. Sam thought Julian was talking nonsense and turned away. Later, Julian and Gemma went to Adonis's house. As expected, Adonis had run away for fear of being caught. They were carefully searching the room. Gemma accidentally discovered Alice's doll in the corner of the room. At this time, Julian felt something unusual on the ground. He opened it and saw that it was a tunnel entrance. Adonis had reunited with Sophie. After holding the luggage, he took out a monkey from his pocket. At this time, Gemma called Sam down to the basement. When Sam saw everything in front of him, he was shocked. The walls and floors of the basement were painted with stars, exactly like the patterns in their daughter's bedroom. Moreover, Sam himself had painted them for his daughter. He finally knew how wrong he was. Turned out that Adonis did it. They tried their best to find more clues. Not long after, Gemma found many Swiss Swiss coins in an envelope. Then, Julian discovered an old photo. On the wall was also taken in Switzerland. It was possible that Adonis had escaped to a town in Switzerland. With the help of his friends, he was able to determine Adonis's location. The three of them immediately went there. Eva finally remembered George. Eva searched George's desk and found a phone. When she learned the truth, she finally accepted the truth that Julian had said before. Eva immediately called and learned that they had gone to the sailors to find Adonis. She also quickly sent reinforcements. The three of them arrived first, holding the photo and asking around, but they didn't get any results, so they sat down at the cafe to rest. At this time, the waiter recognized the girl in the photo and told them that she came down from the mountain. Sam still couldn't believe it. That girl had clearly turned into a pile of garbage before his eyes. The three of them didn't dare to delay. They immediately went towards the mountain that the waiter had pointed out. Halfway there, a big dog rushed over and barked loudly at them. Adonis on the mountain heard the dog barking, so he immediately took out his binoculars. He saw Julian and the two of them walking this way. The three people at the bottom of the mountain still did not know anything. At that moment, Sam was suddenly shot and fell down. Sophia was scared by the gunshot and screamed loudly. Adonis took out his anger on Sophie. At this time, Sophia's daughter quickly ran out. Suddenly, a man in black carried the girl away. It turned out that Eva's reinforcements had arrived. Adonis saw this and immediately ran away in panic. He was shot in the leg by the police and fell to the ground. The criminal was finally caught. Julian chased Sophie to a cliff. Sophie thought that everyone except Adonis was a bad guy. They had taken her daughter away. Without her daughter, she would have nothing left. Sophia was very emotional, so Julian patiently comforted her. At this time, Gemma finally found her daughter. It turned out that Alice and Sophie were imprisoned together. The tattoo was also done by Alice for Sophia, but Sophie was very ill. She recklessly went into the room to help despite being beaten. Later, Adonis met Stone, who had great power, and Henry, who was proficient in medicine. He used the incident in Tehran to threaten them to find a way to cure Sophie. However, Henry could not bear Adonis's actions, so he suggested calling the police. Henry made an excuse that he did not bring the medicine box and went home to find an opportunity to call the police. Although Henry was very careful, he was still discovered by Adonis. The two struggled with each other. Then Adonis killed Henry. The girl wearing glasses whose records George found was later killed by Adonis because she did not listen to him. Because of his reputation, Stone covered up the brutal act. Stone said that the hospital helped him fix the DNA results. He thought that this would be the perfect way to escape and live the life he wanted. At this time, George's body was found in the parking lot. Sophie still has to go through a long treatment. Sophia's daughter is very cute. Finally, she does not have to suffer from the torment of others. She can grow up happily. Brave Alice has also returned to her family. This is the end of part 2 of The Missing. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you again.